Thank you.
Welcome to Guided Spirit Conversations. I'm your host, Marla Goldberg. This podcast has been created with you in mind to acquaint you with some of the most incredible metaphysicians and spiritual leaders from around the globe who have helped others change their lives. In this interactive hour, you will be offered insights and techniques to help you make a difference in your life. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform. And here we go, on to the show. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I'm Marla Goldberg, your host, and you are in Guided Spirit Conversations. Today, I'm so excited. This is the first show of the year, and I have Julia Roman with us. Julia is a certified love coach, self-love coach who helps women release their limiting beliefs, heal relationships with themselves, and experience radical self-love. She is a certified CBT coach with a master's degree in human behavior. Her mission is to give you the tools to transform your relationship with yourself so that you can reach your fullest potential and manifest your heart's desires. Julia seeks to inspire, uplift, and encourage other women to discover the beauty and treasures within them so that they can step into the highest version of themselves. And I just want to make a quick thing. Men out there, this is for you too. So though she specializes in women, what we talk transfers into men. So you can also use these techniques and this information as well. Welcome, Julia.
Oh, thank you so much, Marla, for having me. I am a huge fan of your work, and I'm just so honored to be a guest today and be talking all things self-love with you.
I love it. February is the love month. Everybody looks outside themselves for love, right? And I am a huge advocate of look inside first. And I'm so glad that we're starting my first show of this year with you talking about how to do that.
Absolutely. Well, we were just talking about how self-love is really just the cake. It is the foundation, and everything else is just the icing and sprinkles on top. So we'll definitely be sharing some self-love tips today and how you can just infuse that into your life.
Perfect. So I'm going to start. Let's start with the very beginning of what is self-love. Why is it so important?
Well, self-love is important because a lot of times I think it's just really the last thing on our minds, especially as women. We're so busy, we have so many obligations and so many things that it's just not even on our radar, but it is the foundation, and it is so important for all of other relationships and any kind of success in our life. And I've also discovered that when we truly love ourselves, we have more love to give others, and that if we want to fully receive love, we also need to be able to love ourselves. And when we experience true self-love, all of the inner life begin to thrive and awesome. And that can be our career, our relationships, our confidence, friendships, and so much more. So I think for me, that was one of the reasons I became so passionate about self-love, is that it really just will transform every area of your life.
It's so true. And people worry about being vulnerable. What do you tell them when they say, I'm really afraid of being vulnerable and how I'm going to receive the vulnerability or be received as a vulnerable person? How do you talk to your clients about that?
That's a wonderful question, Marla, because that's something I've struggled with myself. I consider myself a recovering perfectionist and a reformed people pleaser. And I would just constantly have this mask that everything's perfect, everything's fine. But I really feel like we teach by example. And I have shared my struggles with anxiety and panic attacks over the last 20 years. And I actually even had Willow, who I know was one of your guests before,
Yes.
who I'm a huge fan of also. And
I love
she
Pat.
helped. I love her, and she helped me so much because I didn't realize I was an empath. And I'm not sure if you are as well.
Yes,
But I'm
I
assuming you
am
are.
very much so.
And realizing that it's not something to be ashamed of, experiencing anxiety, that a lot of times it's these gifts that we have that we haven't really fully recognized and stepped into. So I always advise my clients to step up and show themselves in a vulnerable state and to be courageous, because when we do that, we develop these authentic relationships and connections with others, and it makes our life so much more fulfilling. And it all starts with vulnerability.
It does. I so agree with you because people, you're as human as anybody else. I'm saying this for the people out there as well as this conversation with you, but you're as human, and we all fall. Actually, I'm listening to Brene Brown's Rising Strong, which talks about what happens when you fall. Rising up strong, being the badass that you can be, and knowing that if you hide behind things, that's not, as she calls, badassery. And and step up into your badassness. I'm just making up that word because it wasn't in her book.
I love it.
And really, understand that if we don't fall down, we can't learn. If we're put on a pedestal and everything's perfect, we don't learn anything.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're here to do. And speaking of learning, let's talk about how self-love can be a very spiritual act, because it's really important on all levels, mental, emotional, and spiritual, but people don't look at it as a spiritual act.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there that it is selfish or egotistical or vain. And I believe that true self-love actually connects you not only to self, but to humanity and to a higher power, whether you call that God or source or the universe. But it really is just tapping into this reservoir of unconditional self-love that we all have within us, and then being able to share that joy with others. But we can't give from an empty cup. So filling ourselves up with love first is what is going to be able to spread it into the world.
It's so true. Have you heard about the hole theory, the hole in your heart, the holes in your heart? That through our things that have affected us through our life, judgments, criticisms, whatever, we get these holes in our hearts, and we feel that we need to fill them with outside things like people, material things, vacation, whatever it might be, but it's all external. And so the point, the essence is when you fill these holes with your own self-love essence, when something falls away, as it most likely will at some point or another, whether you live your life with somebody and they leave first, or it's just a short-term relationship, you fill your heart with your essence and it goes into the frosting type thing. So your heart is whole. Your heart is always whole, like the cake is always the cake. But the external things are the frosting. And if they fall away, your heart stays whole.
Absolutely. That's really the difference between happiness and joy that talks about that. I love all of her books, but the one I just was reading was Atlas of the Heart. And happiness is more dependent external, and it can change based on the conditions of our lives. But joy is something that comes within. They say joy gives us wings. It raises us to a higher vibration within our truth, and it's something that can't be taken away because it's inherent within us.
Exactly. And if you go back to Holocaust survivors, the ones that survive were the ones with true trust and belief in their heart that they were going to make it through. Because if they succumb to their fear, they succumb to the life. That's my belief on a lot of the people, because I know I have a cousin and he wrote a book, and it was, how he survived, and it's called Child of the Holocaust. And it was just very interesting, but it goes into the thing that the people with the strongest beliefs that they were going to make it through really, truly did make it through.
Wow. It's amazing. So inspiring.
So inspiring. So let's talk about boundaries. We were talking about this off the air, and it's one of my big talking pieces, because I'm somebody who came from really blurred boundaries to very delineated boundaries. And I know you were talking of the same thing for yourself as well.
Yes. Well, I feel like boundaries are just a necessary ingredient in the recipe. You can't not have them to practice self-love in a successful way, because a lot of times what happens is that we get burned out when we have these lack of boundaries. And a lot of my clients have experienced, we really just become so dependent on the external, people pleasing and make everyone happy. But it is so important to say no and to protect your energy, to release this need to be perfect, and really just saying yes to what, but also practicing care. And that can be hard. Actually, I just was on a podcast with another mom, and she just how hard it is as a busy mom to juggle everything and that's the last thing on your mind. But actually, when you practice self-care and boundaries, you have more to give. Otherwise, a lot of times we might become resentful, saying yes to everyone and not doing what really feels in line with our values.
And that yes saying, when it's not aligned, affects us both, not both, but mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yes, absolutely. Soul sucking.
So I like that, soul sucking. So how do you start if people have no boundaries or don't know how to delineate boundaries, what are the first 3 steps you would suggest to building boundaries without feeling
It's a great
selfish or abusive?
Yes, exactly. Because your mind is going to go to that. It's focusing on myself and this is selfish. Actually, it ends up being kind of a service to the world because when you have these boundaries, you're able to give more. But one of the first things I would say is sometimes we're so into our own little worlds that we're not seeing another person's perspective. So I would ask them about like maybe a friend that they have, like if they were in a similar situation, would say yes to you if they weren't feeling it and it wasn't in line with them, and they would probably say no. So realizing that people who actually love us and value us don't want us to push ourselves or to get to the point where we're burned out, that they want us to set healthy boundaries. And also just maybe starting small. It doesn't have to be something big. It could just be, think something like, well, if I get an invitation, let me think about it rather than automatically just saying yes to make someone happy. And the other thing would really be just to follow your intuition and what feels right. Because if you say yes to everything and it's not getting everyone necessarily happy, because there's always like something will end up coming up. Maybe you push hard and then you end up getting sick and someone has to end up taking care of you, but really just following that gut instinct, what feels good to you, and honoring that. And then it's just going to get stronger and you'll be able to set more boundaries in the future.
How do you guide your clients when there's a situation where the other party is so outside the boundaries and could be on the verge of abusive? And how do you tell your clients like how to handle those situations?
It's hard because each situation is different. I do think when it gets to the point where there's abuse, and if they try anything, a lot of times it is. I'm one of those people that, if you have to cut toxic people or energetic, cut those energetic cords if they're no longer serving you, because you're not going to be able to give your best in the relationship, and you deserve your love and respect just as much as anyone else. So it does depend, but I do think that loving yourself means that you will not tolerate any type of misbehavior or abuse in a relationship.
See, I agree with you totally. But
Oh,
there's so
good.
many people out there. I do. I so believe in it, and I live that. And there's so many people that just are like, "Oh, how do you do that? How can you do that?" Well, when people are stepping, I like to say, stepping all over you with spiked-heeled shoes or cleats, well,
Mhm.
at some point you've got to stop the pain. You've got to stop the
Yeah.
bleeding until they do something to learn how to be more um, equalized, not
Yeah.
abusive. You have an issue, talk about it. We're, learning how to communicate. That's the big thing to me, is communicating in a civil way.
Yeah, absolutely. And people can change. It's not to say that they can't, but we can't wait for them to. We have to go on living our lives. And it really just comes down to energy. You want someone who's at your level and your frequency. And if they're not, they're going to be bringing you down. So to kind of consider that, how they make you feel when you're around them, and to just try to attract people that are on a higher frequency and vibration.
Which I love. Give me 1 second. I just want to say out there to the audience, please, if you have any questions or comments for Julia or myself, please text them in on whatever platform you're watching this from. And so you can be a part of the show, because this is an interactive show, and we both would love your questions and comments. Also,
Yes.
if you're listening to this via your listening platform after the live broadcast, email me at marla@mghealer.com with any questions or comments that you might have. Okay, Julia, back to you. Let's talk. We were talking about empaths.
Yes.
And Empaths, so people know, they pick up things from the energies around them. Like we're big giant sponges walking around. No, no matter how tall or short you are, you're a big giant sponge, and things around you can absorb into you when you're a super sensitive empath. Even if you're just slightly empathic, things will affect you. So, what do you suggest for people who are empathic?
Well, the first thing I think is really making space for the right people and experiences that you want to draw into your life. So, we did talk a little bit about cutting those energetic cords with any toxic relationships or even people that aren't necessarily in your life in the physical sense, to cut them if they're no longer serving you. And that makes space. I always say to my clients, the universe loves a void. So, they love,
Yes.
God loves the space to be able to create something new. Otherwise, it's being filled up with something that's maybe not in your best interest. So I also recommend the boundaries and protecting your energy, but also just any type of activity that raises your vibration. So that could be being in nature, it could be spending time with animals, journaling. I love salt baths. I even have an Epsom salt bath for empaths that I use, and it's just unbelievable. It takes out all of the toxins. I can send it to you if you want, Marla.
I would love that. Yes, thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And it really just, I think with empaths, they get overwhelmed easily and they need grounding activities. And that's something that I share with my clients as well, because they are more prone to anxiety and stress rather than someone who isn't. But empaths do possess so many wonderful gifts. And I think we just got one message from Teresa, and she's saying she has some abilities. Her husband passed away in December. She'd love to communicate with
Oh,
him. And empaths can tap into the universal source of energy and be able to. I haven't been able to communicate with loved ones, but I'm not sure. Maybe you have, Marla.
I'm actually better communicating with somebody else's loved ones than my own. But yeah, I do have a little mediumship experience.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, empaths are just, they're so in tune with everything. And I've had dreams like premonitions, and people can come to you, and there's so many just wonderful things. But empaths they have all these wonderful gifts and abilities, but they do need to definitely protect themselves and set boundaries.
It's, it's so true. And here's the thing that people say, it's like when you're setting these boundaries or you're trying to limit toxic people, well, people are my blood, right? That
Mhm.
family's blood, and they think that because they're family, they can treat people a certain way. Or if you're a close
True.
friend or you're an in-law. And
Mhm.
I put boundaries down about that too, because if you're being abused by a parent, by a sibling, whether it's emotional, verbal, or physical, or a combination of, you have the
Mhm.
divine right to protect yourself. And if protecting yourself means um, putting yourself, putting boundaries and just giving some space between you and those people, then that's what you do. And if you have to see them for holidays and you only talk to them a few times a year, that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long
No.
as people learn to, um, communicate with each other in a civil, again, I use the word civil, but a civil way.
Absolutely. And they can, because a lot of times these family members, they treat other people in a civil way, but not necessarily us. So we know that it is possible. And when they're
Right.
ready, that we're there. Saying something like, if basically if you leave a light on, then I'll leave a light on. So when you're ready, when you're available and you're open to change, then I'm going to be receptive to that. But in the meantime, I do need to protect my light.
I love that. I really do. That's fabulous.
Thank you.
So let's talk about simple ways to practice self love. So we've talked about boundaries and how to put those up. What other steps do you have to bringing self love to yourself, or not to yourself, but to a client?
Well, yes, I everything that I tell my clients, I practice what I preach, and I think that that's really important, because a big thing for me was the positive self-talk, and it seems very simple, but it really comes down to questioning and challenging these limiting beliefs that we all have. And it can be actually a way to reprogram our brains, that we can actually create new neural pathways rather than some of the things we might have said to ourselves, like, oh, you're so stupid, or you can't do anything right. That when those thoughts come up, because they're often unconscious and they're often not even ours, they could be from our families or from society, that we start to recognize that that's not our truth, that's not our essence. And what would a more realistic belief be? And I love that you brought up Brene Brown, because she always talks about the difference between, like, I'm a bad person versus I did a bad thing, shame versus
Mhm.
guilt. So we can look at it that way, that we maybe did something that we're not proud of, or we want to make amends for a change, but that we are inherently still us, and we are, children of God. We're good people. I think
Yes.
that can be super empowering. And really, this self-care, because self-care can just not only restore our energy, but it raises our vibration and frequency. And that is just where we are primed to attract these fulfilling relationships and experience. And the last thing I would say would be self-compassion, which I'm a huge, fan of, and I talk about it. But I feel like that's just really, you can't have self-love without self-compassion. They go hand in hand. And I thought it was interesting. There was a study from Forbes. There was a direct correlation between self-compassion and success. So a lot of times we shame ourselves, and we're so hard on ourselves because we want to, do things better, but it actually makes progress harder. So self-compassion is definitely one of the cornerstones of self-love.
You've got my vote on that too, because it is. It
Good.
truly is. Let's talk about forgiveness and self-love, because a lot of people have so many, I call them misnomers. I'm not going to say they're wrong. I just think that they don't have the full scope of what forgiveness truly is and how it works with your self-love.
hmm Well, so much of it not only is forgiving other people, but forgiving ourselves. If we
Yes.
want to make a change in our life, and if we're constantly berating ourselves or telling ourselves, well, you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, well, then that's what our reality is going to be. So, what I usually recommend to clients is just to focus on giving themselves that love and grace and forgiveness that they would extend to someone else in a similar situation. And I love, in terms of self-compassion, just the aspect of recognizing that we are all connected, we all struggle, we all suffer, but that we can be united in that, that this is not something that just ourselves are going through, that we extend that forgiveness to others. So we also need to give that to ourselves.
It's so true. And some people have a hard time saying they're sorry, whether it's to another person
Mhm,
or to themselves. And again, that's allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And that
mhm.
doesn't mean just because you forgive someone that you let them off the hook. But basically, I always say it's the gift you give yourself, because you're not
Yeah,
letting anybody off the hook for doing anything that they did, but it's letting yourself off the hook for carrying that weight around with you. Because with when you don't forgive, it's like resentment builds, bitterness builds.
mhm. And
You don't
especially
want
if you don't want to be tied energetically to that person, I would think.
that too. Yes, all of the above. So it's just, and here's my belief is you don't have to be face to face with someone to forgive them, to
Yeah.
say, this is about you, this isn't about me, and I'm not letting it affect my life, and moving on. And, I forgive you. You can say it to your angels, your guides, and it's just
Mhm.
as effective energetically as it is,
Absolutely.
especially if you don't want to face somebody who's done something to you.
And it's so hard, I think, and maybe I would say just anyone, but specifically empaths, we just take everything on. We take it so personally, and really, how anyone ever treats you is a reflection of them. It has nothing to do with you, but it can be really hard not to take that on as your identity, or how someone has maybe mistreated you in the past. But it is a way, if we forgive someone, whether they deserve it or not, it's a way to move on with our lives and release that from our, consciousness, and our way of making a new start for our life.
I agree. You and I are just so on the same
I
level. It's
love that.
like, this is just a very easy conversation because we both are on the same page with that. And
Yes.
so, do your clients, the ones you work with to help, do you find that there's because sometimes this happens in with therapists, coaches,
Mhm.
whatever title you want to give yourself, but in terms of similar issues that they're dealing with, do your clients come to you with very, very similar issues?
Oh,
And
yeah,
how do you,
absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was just going to say, and how do you work with their struggles?
Well, I think it's always interesting how a lot of times we attract people in our lives that we've maybe gone through a similar experience. So I think that that
Mhm.
has been something that's helped me because I've been able to serve my clients based off of my own experiences. But the great thing though is that I have noticed certain themes. A lot of them are the low self-worth, not recognizing just the inherent beauty and wonder that is within all of us, and also anxiety, which I thought was quite interesting, that there's been kind of a thread of that. And I do feel like anxiety and perfectionism go hand in hand sometimes. So, helping my clients through a lot of those limiting beliefs about themselves. And once they're able to release them, I've just been able to see just miraculous changes internally and externally in their lives. Just so many things that they'd wanted to manifest and attract, being able to, because they finally healed whatever that was, that wound within them, and recognized that they are inherently worthy and deserving of love.
And we all are. I mean, if you talked about Jesus, everybody deserved love, even if they were throwing stones at him or hurting him. The turning the other cheek didn't mean to ignore it, but it was not letting it affect you. That's how,
Mhm.
how I that's how I take it in. So in the world of Marla, that's that's how I perceive it.
Absolutely. Well, that's another example of why how we treat others is a reflection of us, because someone like Jesus is going to treat everyone the same because that's who he is. That's his
Right.
essence. So if we can always remember that, focusing more on our own actions and how we're treating others rather than how they're treating us, that is going to, there is a ripple effect, and you will start to see, I'm sure anyone listening, the types of people that will start to come into their life and the angels because of all the love and the good they're putting out in the world.
I so agree. Now, you have a course coming up. It's a 6-week radical self love program. Let's talk about it. Tell me what it's about, what people who will sign up will receive from this class.
Yes. So it is a program that I've taken clients through, and I've also taken them through a 12 week. So this one is more affordable, and also it's just more intensive. So you really just get a lot of bang for your buck. But it really is just all about how to experience that unconditional self love so that you can manifest your heart's desires, and to really release those limiting beliefs that are holding you back from reaching your highest potential and transforming that relationship with yourself, because as we've talked about, self-love is truly transformative. So it includes 6 1-hour one-to-one Zoom sessions, workbooks I've created, and activities, exercises, worksheets, and Voxer, which is voice note support, for 6 weeks. So it's really just to reclaim that self-love that is all of our birthright, and to attract the life of your dreams. And I've just been able to see that transformation in my clients, and I'm just so happy to be able to share this program with everyone today.
It sounds like a fabulous program. And six
Thank you.
one-on-one. I mean, how phenomenal to be able to have you for 6 1-hour sessions to give them steps and guidance and just insight into how to love themselves. Hey, Terry. So
Yes. It is. It's intense. I mean, we have, I usually offer like a 30-minute celebratory session after, where we just kind of talk and gab, but these are questions that I've designed specifically to really get to the root of these problems. So it's an intense 1 hour, but a lot of the times, my clients have said, wow, we really got to stuff that I hadn't even thought about. And the healing starts to occur. It's not always comfortable, but it occurs. And once that happens, then it really makes space for all the things that people want to attract in their lives.
So here's the big question. Is it one start date or is the start date fluid based on when somebody signs up for the course?
Well, since it's a program, yeah, we can start anytime. I've had multiple clients, and it's kind of scaffolded, and they have their times that work for them. So it's not set in stone. It is very flexible. Yes.
Perfect. And let's share where they can sign up. Where would they sign up for this program?
Well, Instagram, I spend a lot of time on there. There's information there, but also on my website, there's more information that they can contact me, and I can give them information to sign up.
And the website is juliaspiritualcoaching.com.
Yes.
So check out the website, check out what Julia does, how she can work with you, how she can help you. And now back to the show. But I just wanted to really, put that out there because I was reading about the program and it was just like, that is really, it gives you, it's so meaty, I guess is the best way to put
Thank
it.
you.
You're
I try.
welcome.
The value. Mhm.
It is. It's definitely a lot of bang for your buck. You're right. And whoever tries this, I'm confident, will walk away with so much more than they stepped in with. So,
Thank you. Yes.
so let's talk about your approach to how is your approach to self-love different than the other self-love coaches out there?
Well, there are lots of different, especially like on Instagram, there's so many different self-love, self-confidence, even self-compassion coaches. And I think for me, the big thing was I really just wanted to make sure that my approach was holistic, that it included the mind, body, and soul connection. And that self-love is more than just going to the salon or you having a spa day, which are great, but it really is this internal work and healing that needs to happen and recognizing this inherent worth within you and also the value of everyone else. But I also incorporate the spiritual teachings of the major world religions. I'm a Baha'i, so that has inspired my work so that it's inclusive and also just incorporates so much of the things that I've learned and really just making things typical and accessible so that they can experience this unconditional self-love. So it's not it's very hands-on. Like I said, there's activities, there's exercises, worksheets, there's guided visualizations, meditations, so many things that they're taken through and that they can actually apply these into their life in practical ways so that they can start to see the results that they've been hoping for.
That's great. Now we talk about limiting beliefs. Okay. We all have them. They've all been projected on us and imprinted on us.
Yes.
What is your approach to helping people release their limiting beliefs?
Well, I did actually want to share. I have a releasing beliefs exercise that I've done and I think would help a lot of people. And it's really taking whatever that limiting belief might be and getting to the root of it. Because sometimes I think we think something is a limiting belief and it's not. We might think, well, I'm not successful enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not beautiful enough. But what is the real underlying belief? And that might be that I'm unworthy of love. So journaling about that, discovering what it is that's hindering you from achieving progress and attracting your heart's desires and really just starting to question it. And that is where the CBT, I'm also a cognitive behavioral therapy coach, comes in, that we're starting to actually say, well, is this the truth? Like we start to look at evidence and try to find if there's any support. And I would say almost 9 times out of 10, there isn't anything, there's no basis for it. And that what we can do is take this belief, you write it down, you can, in a safe space, burn it. I feel like there is something very powerful just watching it all go up in smoke and then really replacing this old belief with a realistic belief that I am deserving of love, I am worthy, and thinking about how you would speak to a friend or how a loving friend would speak to you. And then this is your new affirmation. I'm very big on those, repeating it to yourself. This is part of rewiring your brain. And it does have to be something you believe and feel. It can't just be like, I'm, a millionaire or something. If that doesn't
Right.
necessarily resonate with you, or I'm the president of the United States, but it's something that is able to change the way you're thinking and to be able to really just step into your power and recognize that you are worthy as you are deserving of love, and repeating this to yourself to really, for me, just really releasing that limiting belief once and for all.
I love that. And I think things like enough, being enough, I am enough is a good one because many people don't feel they're enough. And that's why they try to be more, have more, because they don't feel like they're worthy, like you said, enough. And that's a big one because in terms of sharing, telling them they're enough. So, do you have a story for us? Can you share? Is there like like this big light goes on for your client story that you can share?
Yes, I actually have 2, but I don't want to
Okay,
take too much time.
you are fine.
Well, because I think they both really demonstrate not only the power of self-love, but so many of the things that women struggle with in particular. And the first one was actually a former client that I had who had been single for quite a while. She was a single mom and really just had a lot of those limiting beliefs. She didn't feel like she was beautiful. She didn't feel like, she had the confidence to attract the right relationship. And shortly after our time together, she manifested this amazing relationship with this wonderful man. They're still together, and
Oh,
I'm
nice.
not taking credit for it, but I just feel like once she was able to recognize that she was enough, that she was worthy, that she was able to that and to manifest that, that was definitely a client win.
That sounds great. That's a great story.
Oh, thank you. And then the other one was I had a client who really struggled with her body image and self-confidence. And she would just try to like hide her body. She would wear like really baggy, oversized shirts. She said that that filled up most of her closet. And that once we got down to what was really going on, like a lot of the trauma that had happened in childhood and these limiting beliefs that she had taken on as part of her identity, once she was able to heal those, she would send me pictures of her in these really like beautiful form-fitting dresses and stylish clothing. And she said her wardrobe completely changed. She had gotten rid of all the baggy shirts and she just felt confident in her skin. And she just really embraced the beauty of who she was inside and out. But it was really, as within, so without. It really came from inside of her first, so that the external, everything started to shift.
I love that because it does shift and like Lizzo. I mean, I think
I love
Lizzo
Lizzo.
is she is amazing. And I love how she totally accepts herself in her skin, in her body, with everything else going on. And she will strut it. I mean, I am
Mhm.
so impressed with that because I was brought up having those beliefs about body image and
Yes.
how you're supposed to look and present yourself to the world. And here's Lizzo in all her glory, and it's like, good for you.
Mhm.
In my past, I would have said, oh, a leotard, maybe you need to, but today I honor her for what she does and how
Yeah.
she lives her life.
Well, and I think that when we're confident like that and we're full of self-doubt, then other people are going to see, like how you said, how you responded, because you're like, oh, well, she feels good in her skin. She's confident. She embraces her curves. I will too. So we're really just constantly, whether, consciously or not, teaching the world how to treat us based on how we're treating ourselves.
It's so true. I just have to tell you one quick story. I was
Yes.
recently in Hawaii and there was a big girl and she was wearing a thong bathing suit. Okay. And again, it goes into, and I would look at it and I'd say, well, maybe if she can do it, I can do it. Because at my age, I would never think about wearing a thong in public. But but it's
You
just,
should.
again, the fact that she had belief in her and it was just an F you to anybody else. I want to do this. I'm going to wear this. And she did it with pride and grace and dignity.
Wow, that's
And
amazing. I love that story. And so
I
much of it is that we're seeing the world through, I don't necessarily say the patriarchy, but kind of like a outdated, view of what society says is beauty. That's not necessarily what we believe, that we're constantly also to just protect ourselves, looking at it through, maybe a white man's point of view. And there's so much type of beauty. There's diversity, there's so many different things that we haven't even considered. And when we open our minds to that, then we can really embrace all of the beauty that we have within us, because we're not all supposed to be the same. It's like we're flowers in a garden. We need to
yes.
embrace the different types, if you're a tulip, if you're a rose, whatever it may be.
And I will tell you that Paloma Picasso, she did jewelry designing for Tiffany's, and I remember looking at her, and though she wasn't the American quote unquote, for those who can't see that I'm doing air quotes, classic beauty, her imperfections made her so striking and beautiful. And
Wow.
it's those imperfections in life that really hold the magic, in my opinion. It
Absolutely.
truly does, because it's showing that the knot in the tree, right? I mean, it's not a very smooth trunk. It has these knots in it. Well, the knots give texture and character and color, and that's
Yeah.
our perceived imperfections do for us.
Absolutely. I
That
totally agree. I love that analogy and the authenticity. But the thing is, if you can't have authenticity without being vulnerable and being courageous, and that's what Brene Brown talks about too. So if we want to track this life, we have to know who we are and what we stand for, and really just embrace and love all of the things, rather than just try to compartmentalize or think I'm flawed in this way. Can you find a flaw that you have and maybe love it? And that was something as an empath I did, because people would tell me I was too sensitive. And I thought, well, maybe that's like a superpower, because I'm super sensitive and I can be a people reader and whatever it may be, but just find the beauty within that, because it's just like that. I think there's something like with a vase and it has all the cracks, and then that's where the beauty comes in. It's like how it's filled in. I believe it's like a Japanese vase or something.
yes, I know exactly what you're saying. They put gold. What they do is they
Oh,
paint the cracks with gold. And so by from age and everything else, and then you see like these gold veins through it, and it brings this new level of exquisiteness, beauty to, showing that just because something's broken and re-put together doesn't make it horrible, ugly, ruined.
yes.
They're bringing the beauty to it. And I was thinking about that same analogy, that same story when you started speaking. It's like,
Oh,
and
I
then
love
you
that.
brought it up.
I feel like we're very in tune. Yes.
Very, very in tune. But I'm going to take a stop here because it is charity shout out time. And I love my charities, and this is our way here at Guided Spirit Conversations to give back to the charities of our guests. And yours is St. Jude, which is one of my favorites. I used to live in Memphis, and St. Jude's is housed there. That's where their headquarters is. And I just love what they do for the children and the children's families. So I'll let you speak about it in further detail and ask people to help St. Jude.
Yes, please. Anyone listening, please donate to St. Jude. They're one of my favorite charities because, I believe it's either all or most of the proceeds go to the children. And is it all of them?
I think it's the majority of them that they do, but
Yeah.
they have more funds going to the children than their administration.
Yes. Well, they're one of the best out there because they do give just a small amount to the administration, so much to the children and their families. And anytime one of those commercials comes on, it just tears and tugs at my heart, because they're just these little angels and so sweet and innocent, and that they can have all of this help and support, and that families do not have to pay when they take their children there. It's just so remarkable. I'm just always in awe of the work that Danny Thomas did. I actually was watching him on a Lucy episode the other night because I just was like, I think this is just so amazing that throughout all of these years that this work is continuing and helping so many children. So please consider making a donation today.
Yes, please help the children, help the families. And I love when they say, the families have enough to worry about with the sick child. They don't need to worry about housing and food and travel and the expense of it all.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that they're not just supporting the ill individual, but the whole family as a unit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the family is the heart of it. And just all of the advances in the medicine and the scientific, technology and all the things that they do is just, it's state of the art, and they're getting the best.
They are getting the best, and they're
It's
ahead
just
of the
really,
curve.
really wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. And so it's stjude.org, I believe. Let me just find
Yes.
it on my, yes, stjude.org. So please go check them out, see how you can help. If you're in the Tennessee area near Memphis or in Mississippi by the border, they might need your physical help, volunteering time, as well as money to help with entertain the children, bring things to the children or to the families. So
Yes.
it's a great endeavor. So thank you for that. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Marla.
And I'm so glad it's a
appreciate you.
charity I know a lot about, or some
Oh,
about.
good.
I should say. Not that I've had an
Yes.
ill child, but yes. So
Wow.
let's talk about this. Do you have a message of importance of healing that you would like to share with the listeners?
Well, I feel like with any type of when we heal ourselves, that's when we're able to heal others and make a difference in the world. So that was really what got me started on my own healing journey. And to remember that healing is not always linear, that it can have, ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and that sometimes we might feel like we're going backward, but we're always moving forward. We're never losing progress. And that when we actually heal ourselves, that it is truly a gift to the world.
I like that. It's so true. And it really is. It's just like when one meditates. If you bring a
Yeah,
group of people to meditate, it's like each person meditating is like, helps 72, raise the consciousness of 72 individuals, something like that. I think the numbers are. So, when you heal yourself, you are raising the consciousness of fellow people, because the statement, we are many, we are one, because it's all a net that we're all connected to energetically. Even though people say, oh, no, 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 we're all connected. Like you've been saying throughout
absolutely.
the show.
Yes, we're all one human family, definitely.
True. So if you had a tip to give for living a happy and fulfilling life, what would it be?
I would say to know yourself, love yourself, and to be of service to others. And one of my heroes, Lucille, has said that really just to love yourself first, and everything else falls into line. And when you really have to love yourself, when you really love yourself, then you can get things done in the world. So I really couldn't agree more with that it all starts with that self-love, and that is how we're able to achieve the things that we want and to be able to get things done that we want to.
I agree. There's no, I'm like, wow, I think she's in my head.
Oh my God. We're on the same page.
So on the same page. So I've asked you a lot. We've talked about a lot of different things, but I know there's more that you'd like to share that I haven't asked you. What would you like to share that I haven't talked about with you?
Well, I think we touched a little bit on the self-compassion. And I think that is so important because, when we are struggling and suffering, we tend to think that it's just a very individual endeavor, and that so many of our experiences are universal. And I'm a huge fan of the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, and she's a self-compassion researcher and professor. She wrote a book all about she's written actually a few books about self-compassion, and she outlines the three major components of self-compassion, which are self-kindness, which is speaking to yourself as you would a friend, being gentle, being supportive, being mindful. So this means really identifying with those thoughts, but observing our feelings and the things that come into our mind, and not suppressing them, but just really letting them flow and float by. And that can be done through meditation and so many other types of practices. And the last one, which is my absolute favorite, is common humanity, which is recognizing that we all go through difficult times. No one has it easy, and that we are, the struggling and the suffering is a universal experience, but that is really connecting us to our common humanity, and to reach out for support, to not be afraid, because there are so many, amazing teachers such as yourself out there, and people who are ready, when they say, when the student's ready, the master or the teacher appears, that it is all there, but we sometimes don't. We kind of have our eyes closed and the sun's still shining. So if we can just open our eyes, there's all these resources, all of this love, all of this support, and to ask for help, because that actually connects us in a deeper way than when we just try to do it all on our own.
It's so true. I love that, because it is true. And kindness is so important. Kindness to yourself, kindness to others, kindness to animals, just human nature is so
Yeah.
important. The only thing I would add to this would be gratitude. That's the only thing I would add to your list. Not that the list is lacking anything, but I
No, that's
feel
good.
that gratitude is also a piece of whether you're grateful for things that you're able to do for others, grateful for things that you've experienced, but being thankful and grateful for everything that comes into your life. And I even look at the stuff that is like irritating as grateful, because if we didn't have those irritations, if we didn't have those interactions where they're not perfect, we wouldn't be able to learn from them.
That's true. And it makes you appreciate when things are going right.
Exactly. When you're mindful, we go back to the mindful thing, because
Yeah.
some people go through life and they just keep expecting more and more and more of the same. And then the gratitude falls down and the mindfulness falls down. And then they wonder, well, what happened to all that goodness?
Yeah. And so much of it is that perspective, I think. And there's like the parable of the Chinese farmer. I'm not sure if you've heard that. I'm probably going to butcher it, but basically it's the farmer who has a son, and at first his son is going to be, it's like drafted to go to war, but he was injured. So at first everyone's like, oh, your poor son, he was injured, things are so bad for you. But then that actually ended up being a good thing because he didn't have to go to war. So there's so many different like nuances and things that God sees the whole picture. We don't recognize at the time maybe that this is for our highest good, this is actually benefiting us. But at the time people might be like, oh, poor you, this is so horrible that you're going through this. And like you said, if we can take the lessons from that and grow from it spiritually, that it's this constant evolution, we're constantly drawing closer to God and the light, that it's actually just part of our own spiritual development and is benefiting us. So to be grateful, which I'm so glad that you brought up, because gratitude is huge.
It is, and everybody looks at things in a different perspective. And I love your list of three: the self-kindness, mindfulness, and common humanity, because there's a lot of people who just think. I was watching The Butler the other night, and oh my God, so good. And when you see what they portrayed, what was going on, that many of us, well, you weren't even a twinkle in your parents' eye at the time. I don't even know if your parents were a twinkle in their parents' eye at the time.
No.
But what, these people went through, and how there was no humanity for another human being. They didn't look at people as humans. And it's heart-wrenching when people treat others that way, for me, or animals.
Oh yeah, me too.
You don't have to like every animal. You don't have to like every human in the world, but just have, humanity, kindness, and like you say, compassion for them, because nobody knows what they're going through. We all wear our masks.
Absolutely. And it feels better to come at a place of kindness and non-judgment. So actually that's another reason why I almost feel like if someone was going to say self-love is selfish, then it is selfish, and that how we treat others is actually how we're treating ourselves, which is that was one of the great lessons that I've learned in my life. And that if we want to treat ourselves with love, we need to be treating, like you said, animals and others with kindness and compassion, because life is just one big boomerang. It's just going to come on right back. So just give out as much love as you can.
It's so true. Okay, I have one, I think, last question. I think because I'm looking at the time, Valentine's Day is coming. It's about 10 days away. So what would you tell people regarding Valentine's Day, and maybe they don't have their own outside Valentine, meaning a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it might be? What do you tell them on how to deal with Valentine's Day, and what Hallmark expresses as a way to experience it?
That's a wonderful question. I do think sometimes with the idea of love, it is so limited, that love is this universal force. It's the greatest power, that God has created, that it keeps the atoms together, and it's romantic love is a part of that. But love in itself is the essence of our being. It's who we are. And to recognize that a lot of times, on social media, that we shouldn't really believe everything we see. We don't really know what's going on with someone. And I'd actually just shared recently with in another podcast that I'd been in a relationship. I was engaged. I had all these Instagram pictures. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. And I was miserable. I am so much more happy on this Valentine's Day than I was that Valentine's Day. That it really comes down to loving yourself and how you feel about who you are. And that everything else is just, like we said earlier, the icing on the cake, but that you are actually the great love of your life. And to focus on that, to focus on what makes you happy and brings you joy, and what makes you light up, because that is what is a potential partner from a place of lack. That it does come from being fulfilled, and take yourself on a date. I mean, who's to say, why can't you just go to a restaurant, or go to a movie, or do something, have a spa day? I think that's probably what I'll do. I'll order in, just do something that makes you feel good. It's Valentine's Day can be for everyone. It doesn't have to just be for couples.
I like to go to those, what do you call it? Those foot massage places where you sit back and they just rub your feet for an hour. That's heaven for me. So
Yes.
it gives my
That sounds,
husband a break.
that sounds like a great Valentine's Day.
Yeah, bring some wine. Just sit back and just go, and just enjoy the touch, the feel. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I would just share one other thing is that I had a relationship. It was my first marriage, and there was not a lot of physicality in it. And so I would take myself to get massaged every so often so I could have the touch that I needed. So I'm sharing that not to necessarily vomit personal information, but go somewhere, get the touch you need.
Yeah.
Whether it's a manicure and they rub your, massage your hands or do one of those reflexology places, but do something for you that makes you feel good and gives you what you might need in terms
Yes.
of whether it be physical touch or relaxation, so that you can give it to get it
Yes.
all
Treat yourself.
together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Julia, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I probably didn't have to talk at all. You were saying everything
No,
that
I
was
loved
in my
it.
mind. So it was,
I love learning from you.
thank you. And I love learning from you. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I want to thank Bridget, my right hand, my left hand, for everything she does to get the show up and running, and the graphics. We have new graphics that are just really phenomenal. So thank you, Bridget. I want to thank you, the listening audience, for taking time out of your life, out of your day, to participate in this podcast, whether you saw it live or you're listening to a replay. I'm grateful for you because I do this for you. I do this from my heart to yours. And I just want to ask that you please subscribe on your favorite listening platform, so that you don't miss any of our exciting episodes that are upcoming in the rest of the year. Also, go to Marla Goldberg with 2Rs.com and get on our mailing list so you don't miss one single episode or event or anything that I'm participating in. And you can also see what I do and how I can work with you. Remember to check out Julia. Her website is juliaspiritualcoaching.com. Check out her wonderful program, her 6-week radical self-love is a radical self-love program. And you know what? This is the best time. Whatever time it is for you to start is the best time for you to start. So when opportunities arise, realize that it's showing themselves to you for a reason. And so check her out, check me out. If you are in the Charlotte area, I will be at the Bag Lady Fridays from 2:30 to 6:30, offering my services, past life regression, spiritual response therapy, and intuitive life coaching sessions, which you can do in the store in person. You don't have to have a session to come and say hello. It's 1516 East 4th Street, so come visit me. I do remote sessions, so if you can't make it to Charlotte and into the store, you can reach out to me personally through my website. Okay, well, our first week is completed, and again, so grateful for you. And as I leave you, I send you love, blessings, and gratitude. Know how grateful that you're in my life in whatever capacity you're in it. Grateful that you've been participating in the show with Julia Roman, and how life would be will have so much less color without you in it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you haven't heard these words today, I'm going to say them to you right now. Okay? I love you. And know that you're loved. You're never alone, and you are loved. There is somebody out there who cares. So take that with you for the next week. I hope it keeps your heart warm. I will see you next Thursday at 12 noon Eastern time. Until then, stay warm, stay healthy. And if you're in that snowbelt area, please put supplies in your car. Put a blanket or one of those aluminum warming blankets in your car, water, food, some snacks, and a little can, could be a Folgers coffee can with a candle and a book of matches, so that if, God forbid, you get stuck somewhere, you have enough things to keep you warm, hydrated, and nutrition. If you're traveling with your animals, bring food and water for them as well. And I'll see you next Thursday. Stay well. Take care. Bye.